Tulsa Titans are those in our city who aren't backing down. They stay positive when things look hard. They lead with integrity, even when it requires sacrifice. They take their family life as serious as their work life. This show features them to teach and inspire the next generation among us. Welcome to Tulsa Titans, highlighting our local business leaders who are making a difference. Today, I'm super excited. I've got Mark Sherwood here with me. He's a doctor of Naturopathic or a Naturopathic Doctor. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well, Kellen. Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. Super honored to be here. Great podcast. Looking forward to sharing some hope with people.
I am too, brother. I am too. And I ask a set of questions. I'm really interested to get some of them. I want to go way off that really quick because when we were off mic, you said, man, I'm excited about COVID. And Nobody said that yet. Let's dig in, brother. What do you mean about that?
Well, I mean, we looked at COVID, basically a little bit over a year ago in early 2020, and it seemed like it was such a negative. Everybody's tables, if you will, in their houses were turned upside down and disrupted. In other words, everybody's family lives, cultures, jobs, professional, private lives. And we thought it was bad. We saw what we thought to be church closings and business closings, and economy turned bad, right? But the more you look at that, and this is very important for our listeners to get, is we all know as believers that if your enemy in any competition shows you his hand and where he's trying to attack ahead of time, you win. It's good. So that time showed us how weak we were. And it showed us our weaknesses physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And anytime somebody tips their hands like that, that's trying to take you out or hurt you or beat you, if you got that information, man, it tells us we need to strengthen up. And I looked at that over the course of time after the shell shock was done, of course. And I thought, okay, so what we need to do is we need to get stronger spiritually, emotionally, physically, and do whatever it takes to strengthen every part of our lives, because this is the whole of the human being. So I looked at it from a positive standpoint. And you watch, and it's true, that people are going to respond to that. If they truly hear the voice of God, they'll respond and they go, okay, because when the weakness is there, that makes us strong, because that's when God shines, when we're at our weakest, and he's the one that perpetuates the strength in those areas. So I'm pretty excited about what's happening and what's potential in people's lives if we just take a different perspective and a different contextual viewpoint.
No, I absolutely agree. I've seen a lot of fruit from COVID as well. And so when you say it exposed our weaknesses, what are some of the weaknesses that you've seen exposed?
Well, first, physically, let's talk about that. You know, and I just, as we were talking off camera, we did not get leadership towards prevention of disease processes or even optimal function of the immune system instruction from government, medicine, or church. Now, you say, what does the church have to do with it? Everything to do with it, because the church should understand, most of all, the body of Christ is the temple, which is our physical bodies. With that said, it showed us that our health was poor, very, very poor. And with all the comorbidities, that's a word that I knew, but now everybody knows that word. They have comorbidities, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease. How many of those things are driven by lifestyle, the standard American diet, the Western diet? In America, we perpetuated that thing, didn't we? We bloomed it, we grew it, and now we export it around the world. How brilliant is that? Not. So it's like, we got to look at that. And I didn't see anyone talking about how to optimize the system. I saw them talk about, well, we need to get you to the hospital and give you medications because you're going to die. And then from an emotional standpoint, just a perpetual barrage of fear. Fear. It was social media. It was TV, internet, radio. It was everywhere. And that's what we were living in. Now, fear will crush the hope of a human being and crush the immune system, because when fear takes over, Kellen, fear will send the system down a pathway of trying to survive, as if we're being chased by a lion 24/7. And eventually we're running out of gas, and we did. From a spiritual standpoint, my goodness, that's a big Pandora's box issue, but we thought the church was closed. We forgot that the church can't close, because the church is people. It's people. as long as you got a breath, as long as you got mouth, as long as you got voice coming out of that, man, you're the church. You are the church, and you can speak truth. And I really looked at that and thought, okay, it fragmented things, it uprooted things. But anytime you uproot things like weeds, you have an opportunity to weed out more things for the garden, which is life, to really bloom and blossom. So that's sort of a mini take on those three areas.
Awesome. No, that's great advice. And so that's what I want to dig into. I really respect you, Mark. And I can't say that about everybody else. There's a lot of professionals that have a lot of knowledge. And what's missing for me in the realm of respect is action.
Yep.
And so the reason that you have my respect is you believe what you believe, and you believe it and take action on it. And you believe in health and you take action on it. And so for the audience, what I want to tee up, we talk about those actionable items. Can you just share things in your life in accordance to your health, what you believe in that you do on a daily basis that makes you you and makes you successful?
So my viewpoint of success is really about doing all that I can do to allow God to shine through me. And that's what I believe, right? So it's not up to me to perpetuate that. It's up to me to allow God to do what he's going to do. With that said, this is a typical day. If you want to be successful at anything, you've got to have structure. You got to have good habits. If you're scattered and you have no consistency, you have no predictability, therefore there's uncertainty, and anxiety comes with uncertainty. So you got to have baby steps. And as many leadership books, as many leadership gurus as I have relationships with, I've learned a few things. They do little bitty things so well over and over and over again. And it's like not trying to get from point A to point B overnight. They know they're going to get there. It may take them a week, but they'll get there in that analogy. So simple baby habits that I do every day. I get up the same time. That's key. Get up the same time. And I'm going to spend time in the Word. Now, I don't want to have this a religious experience. This is what me, I get quiet. I will read some scripture, and I just try to get my mind and my body and my spirit tuned up for the day. And then I go to the gym. I do. And I'm listening to praise and worship. I don't care how much I lift anymore. I'm not worried about that. Although I'm still getting stronger, I'm still challenging myself or trying to do better cardiovascularly wise. But the bottom line is I'm listening to praise and worship, and I'm just celebrating that continuous celebration into the ability to move. That's a gift, man. So I'm not thinking about anything other than God, thank you that I can move. And that prepares me to go into my job, which as a naturopathic doctor, and my wife, Dr. Michelle, and I, we see literally, we have 8,000 people we see around the world. That's crazy. Who would have thought right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma? There's no way that a business like ours can impact the world. But I'm telling you, look what God does. And so we go to work every day. And we get into people's lives. And we talk to them physically, emotionally, spiritually. And we teach them how to do what we do. In other words, my passion personally is to live as best I can. Give everything I got, physically, emotionally, spiritually, so that God will use me. That's my passion. My purpose is teaching people to do that so that they learn to teach other people. In other words, I'm trying to teach and train disciples, and a disciple is a learner. So that leads you to the next key point. Baby habits are good. Be consistent, be predictable, and become a lifetime learner. And that means that you can't get stuck in a rut of thinking you know everything. And you can't be so stubborn that you can't unlearn something. It's important to keep learning. And I will give it, and this is the little aspect here to understand, everybody you talk to at that moment in time, like I'm talking to you right now, you are the most important person in my world right now. And you get my full attention, heart, soul, mind, and ears. And that's a big deal. Look people in the eye, spend time with them, acknowledge them. If you ask them how they're doing, mean that question. Really mean it. If they say fine and it doesn't feel right, wait a minute. Are you really fine? Don't just do a passing thing. None of these religious colloquialisms or cultural verbiages. It's kind of like verbal diarrhea that means nothing. And then we'll do that all day, and we come home, and then my wife and I will basically debrief and we'll get quiet for a while. We don't talk a lot at that point because it's like you've been giving out all day. And then important, we spend time with each other at that point. Then it's time for bed. Bedtime has to be manipulated so that you get to bed on time so you can get up on time. So, and we eat right. I think it's a given because we view food as nutrients that God gave us. So those little bitty habits right there. I didn't talk about diet. I didn't talk about a specific exercise program. I talked about a lifestyle. And that lifestyle, I promise the listeners, I promise you with 1,000% certainty, if you'll just take some notes and write those things down and do them, man, your life will get better in all areas.
That's great. I'm glad that you talked about lifestyle. I'm glad that you hit on, so I have all these people that have committed at the beginning of the year when they talk about exercise. They're going to get up at 5 a.m. I'm glad you said go to bed on time, because a lot of times it's not a wake up problem. It's a go to bed problem. It's that routine around the blue light and all the things we're doing at night. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you this. That's a routine of a lot of things that you do. And I think for the people that take action, that's really easy. They like those checklists. They like to tell everybody they did something. Mark, around the same kind of lifestyle, what are the things that you don't do?
So, number one, I'm not going to live my life with an 80-20 principle. And I want people to just kind of think about that for a moment. Did Jesus go 80% to the cross? The answer is, well, no. Do we live a compromised lifestyle with an 80-20 culture? It's just being 80% good and 20% bad. You know how it is, Kellen. I'm pretty good. I'm better than most. I don't do that. I'm all in. I'm 100% in. I'm not going to cheat on my taxes. I'm not going to cheat on my word. I'm not going to cheat on my job. I'm not going to cheat on my wife. And to do that, I'm not going to cheat on my diet. We are the only nation in the world that has celebrated something so ridiculous as cheating, which is like making good grades all week in school and then going to the principal on a Friday and saying, whip my butt. It doesn't make any sense, right? Why would you do that? So don't live 80-20. I don't do that. Another thing I don't do, and I've learned this over time, is I don't overextend myself. You got to learn to say no, man. Christian people, believers, feel like they got to say yes all the time. Again, you don't. You need to understand that no is just as powerful. Sometimes saying yes does two things. It enables the other person in a place that they should not be because they needed to be going with someone else or following someone else's advice or doing something with somebody else instead of you. And number two, saying yes to other people might be saying no to you. And that's massive when we're talking about boundaries. So I'm not going to overextend myself. And I think the other thing that I think that is important is I'm not going to live in fear. Not going to do it. My wife and I are known as hope dealers. And the big thing about that is I get it. There's some crazy, weird things that happen in our world. Some of those things create death, calamity, panic. But to live perpetually in fear is not my intent. I'm going to give it all I got, and I've got to watch what I say. I've got to watch what comes into my mouth, of course. I've got to watch what comes into my ears and my eyes. So with that said, not living in fear is perhaps filtering social media, perhaps filtering all media, watching who you hang out with. So those are my top 3 don't do's.
I love that. I was about to ask you, and I'm glad you just covered it. You covered a lot of don'ts, and that goes back to lifestyle. And one of the biggest things with me, and I interact with men a lot, is the people that you're around. So what are your filters for the people that you choose to put your time around?
So this is interesting. A lot of times we feel like, and we're taught this, that, to build good relationships, you got to share all of your baggage, all of your life with everybody. Not a good thing. Be cautious about your inner circle. Inner circle, there's concentric circles here, here, here. It doesn't mean you don't love people out here as much as you love them here. The model is clearly laid out for us in the Bible where Jesus takes Peter, James, and John up on the mountain. What happened to the other 8 or 9 guys? Were they not loved? No, of course not. But the bottom line is there is a pattern there we need to pay attention to. So especially when we're talking about men, I think it's important that men need to have 3 or 4 guys that they can share their life with. But you have no duty to share your life with everybody because there's an exposure there and there's a wisdom there that you need to exercise. If you share it with everybody, they're not supposed to have it, nor are you supposed to share it. Maybe you're supposed to be there for them. Maybe you're supposed to be a rock for them. Maybe they're supposed to share their life with you, but maybe it's not the other way around. Just calm, pause, think before you speak with that. And don't feel an obligation, being a believer or whatever we say we are, to think we have to have what I call diarrhea of the mouth. So pick your friends wisely, pick your inner circle even more wisely, and keep it small. And let relationships take time to develop. Get to spend time with person and don't be in a hurry. When we met our wives, we weren't in a hurry. We just wanted to spend time with them because, it's important to select that. It's important to also select all relationships in that way, whether it be even employee, employer-employee relationships are the same sort of paradigm.
No, great advice. You know what? I like to tie things into the things that kind of make them simple, that we can
Yep.
anchor things on. And in the Bible, they even talk about you got 2 ears and one mouth, right? Don't talk
Yeah,
to.
man. I think a lot of times we talk too much, and one of my favorite sayings here is, you got to watch who you say it to. Is don't miss a good opportunity to shut up. And it's really important. We talk too much.
Well, I like your advice too. And then, for a lot of people, it's just going to be growth and failure. But as you get around people and expose yourself, who's a real peer and who does God put in your life to really pour into you, with the gifts and talents you have, who's low in that area for you to pour into, and kind of identifying who's a peer and
Yep.
who's there for you to build up. Right. And not telling, like, I love that, not telling everybody everything. And I know that's a piece, and I'll just say it's a piece of insecurity for a lot of people. If you recognize that you're overexposing yourself, it's a self-driven thing that you just need to call out, because you want people to feel a certain way about you, and so that's misplaced
Yeah,
identity in self instead of Christ.
it is when you're typically, and this is the psychology of it all, when you feel the need to talk about self all the time, you're not talking about Christ. You're looking for attention. That's it, and that's the hardcore truth. We don't need to be doing that because the attention needs to be on Christ in every relationship. I mean, when people are talking back and forth, and we've all been there, and I just ask the viewers a question right now. Have you been in the context or the company of someone who sucked the life right out of you? And they just wouldn't shut up. They were talking about themselves over and over and over again. And that's the same thing as somebody talking about their illnesses over and over again. Like, my gosh, that sets a tone for the environment. The spoken word was not just the thing that creates the world, it still creates. We still have the voice of God coming from us. And that's a cool concept right there. When you speak, you create. You create environmental change in the conversation and even in your own life. And that's massive. And then to your point about failure, you're going to experience some failure. We all will. We all do. I don't look at failure as a bad thing. I look at it as, man, I gave it my best. I screwed up, and I'm going to learn from that. And failure is one step closer to success. And if you don't have failure, I can promise you this, you're never going to experience success. Some of the greatest people I know would be characterized as massive failures. They really would, multiple times. And if they let that get them down, they're never going to keep going. I mean, look at how many times Ben Franklin and Einstein, for example, two men, those guys did not succeed at everything. They were probably laughed at a lot of time. Look at how many elections that Abraham Lincoln lost. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, these are men that shaped our world. And there are others more modern, but I think we get the idea.
No, that's good. When and around failure, it creates quick growth if you reflect and take action on it the right way. And so, Mark, I've been in your environment. I've seen the excitement from your employees. I've seen that you give them enough rope to fail, to grow. But when around the employees, so going from leadership down, how do you instill your values? How do you instill some of the knowledge that you have to the people below you? What's that look like?
Two things to keep in mind for any leader out there that's got any sort of company, any sort of business. You have to maintain the role of leadership. You can't be their friend. You got to be the leader first. You try to be too close to them, you're going to set yourself up for failure because it goes back to that concentric circles of closeness. Your job is to lead. The business will only go where the leader goes. And so that's a key point. The other key point is you got to spend time with them. So don't stay in your office all day. Don't treat people like crap. I'm not saying that at all. But go around each day if you can and physically talk to each person, even if it's like 10 seconds, just to say, hi, I just want to see how you're doing today. Just do that. And then I think along those lines is have structured, consistent, predictable staff meetings with your leadership. And you take the leadership, you listen to them, listen to advice, listen to wise counsel, but ultimately it's your responsibility. So guard that carefully, take the opportunities seriously, and use that leadership platform to bring about change in the body. It's like the mind of Christ here controls the body. If the body controls the mind, and we say like crazy example, but people will get it. Well, gosh, I just can't stop eating those donuts. Well, okay, time out a minute. Did God, the head, direct you to eat donuts? Well, the answer is no. No. So the body just controlled, the sinful nature just controlled and overruled the mind, which is supposed to be the mind of Christ. So we really need to understand leadership, headship, and authority and not be afraid of it. With that said, every leader needs to submit themselves to other authorities as well for the same reasons.
No, that's really, really great. I like how you put that, and I like the principle. If you just take a hold of the truth, things don't seem so complicated.
It's not that hard. We sometimes think that there's got to be all kinds of weird formulas to do things, but isn't it about relationships? Isn't it about just honest relationships? When you don't lie, you don't have to remember what you said. Just pick your words few, think through them, and the less words you speak, and the more you think through, the more those words will mean, because they're coming from the heart through the filter, hopefully, of God. Should I say this right now? And if so, how do I say this? Even my prayer today before coming on podcast with you was, God, teach me to say every word that needs to be said, not one word less or one word more, to bring glory to you and to bring light, your light, into other people's lives.
That's great. We talk about admire, and I know where you're going to go with this, and I love it. But throughout your career, and then being around leaders and influential leaders, and then you've been around a lot of people with money,
Yeah.
right? You're around a lot of people that have a lot of money and a lot of attention on money. Who do you admire and why?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I probably won't give the answer that people think. I try to guard my admiration of other people. And I try to filter the admiration card with the idea of the only person that walked on this planet Earth and sinned not. And I try to mimic the belief system after that man known as Jesus, because he was tempted in every way, but he sinned not. And I will say this, and this is something that people can grasp, I think. We have that capability. We do. We have the capability because Jesus looked at all of his guys and said, hey, man, hey, dudes, you guys, when I go back to the Father, I'm going to leave you with the Holy Spirit, and he's going to help you, and you're going to do greater things than I did. And I don't take that lightly at all. So I look for those characteristics, and I want to mimic those characteristics of Jesus, which we can. But then in men, as I look around, I've seen a lot of men that I've admired because they've had many of those characteristics I've looked up to. John Bevere is a great, well-known guy, and I know him personally. He's my friend, but I do look up to him and I admire him because his word, in my observation, has been solid. And to me, that's one of the greatest things to look for. I look up to Bob Harrison a lot, and he's, Dr. Increase, and he's got a great ministry, which is good. I appreciate men that I've been around, like a John Jacobs, who has had struggles, but I watched him go through all kinds of stuff for many, many years. Again, some of his own choices, but I still watched him stand strong a few times. So sometimes the people you admire may not have a perfect life, but they exhibited strengths and characteristics that you thought, wow, if I can only show half of that strength in these moments, both good and bad, and I've given you examples of both sides here, I've learned from that, and I will continue to learn from that. And the greatest thing I want to pass on to younger men is what I've learned. You said it best. Don't do everything I've done, but learn from where I've learned and the steps that I've walked. And you can walk in those shoes for a while, but then eventually you're going to lead your own way.
No, that's wonderful. Well, and speaking of learning, and I know that you practice it, you live it out. And that's why we're here is you take action on your beliefs. What are two books? And I saw this question. I really liked it the other day. So you decide to get shipped off to the moon, and
Yep.
you're only going to get to take two books with you. Okay. So for our readers, being in a lot of different lanes and reading and consuming a lot of things over your life, what are the two books and why?
So I've got one that I recently read that was from a secular guy. I mean, it's like, what? He read a secular book? Yes, I did. It was called Limitless by Jim Quick, Kwik, and he's sort of this mind coach for some well-known people out there, like a Tony Robbins, etc. Really very connected. And I read that book, and Limitless was really about a belief system. A belief system. We need to have a limitless belief system. And one of the things he talked about in that book was lies, limiting ideas entertained. And that just blew my mind. How many times have I entertained those ideas? Just one of those was that genius is born. We've entertained that lie. But genius is not born. Genius is earned, man. You learn through experience. You learn it and you earn it. You learn it, you earn it, you learn it, you earn it. It's these failures that go through life. I think that's really an interesting book. One I liked too was, believe it or not, called The Immunity Fix. And I get into the biochemistry of mankind, but I really wanted to know recently, because of COVID and all that, how the immune system works. And the immune system, that was James DiNico Lantonio, big name on the author there, but and also a guy co-author C.M. Land, S-I-I-M Land. But that was a good book because it gave me an insight to the way the system responds to the outside world. The outside world being what we say, who we hang out with, what we eat, what we breathe, and what we do. And wow, how impacting was that? Because now I'm able and more equipped to teach people all those angles. Yes, both of those are secular books. Yes. But again, I've read those both recently, and a lifetime learner is a lifetime reader. So, one habit, please read, don't stop that. But the bottom line is, the reason those books are important because I categorically keep studying and studying and studying and studying. And the most recent book should be the thing on your mind, right? It should be if you retained it. Now, the interesting thing about the Limitless book is there's a part in there about reading faster and comprehending faster. Isn't that cool? So
Cool.
it gave me confidence to know that I could pick up my learned speed reading techniques so that I can learn more and learn more and learn more. And I typically will try to read 10 to 15 books a year, from hard books. And then I listen to podcasts and other things as well.
Well, there's so many different ways to consume and communicate. Mark, I appreciate you giving us your time today. If somebody wants to communicate with you, what's your preferred method? Is it an email address, number?
Yeah, they can just go to Sherwood.tv, Sherwood.tv, and there's multiple ways to reach us on there. We have people reach out to there every day, and obviously it tells a little bit about who you're talking to, right? So again, my wife and I are not any different than anybody else. We've just been doing it a long time, so we would love to connect with anybody, of course. But Sherwood.tv is the place to go.
That's great. Thank you, Mark. And everybody, thank you. This is Kellen with New Wave Solutions. Mark, thank you for giving today.
My pleasure. Good to be here.